People who grow up in the foster system learn early that you do not get to claim space. You earn the right to exist in a room. My name is Elena. I spent my childhood moving through 6 different group homes in Ohio. No family name. No trust fund. No generational wealth. Only a stubborn refusal to become a statistic. Today I own a pediatric occupational therapy center in Chicago. I help children with sensory processing disorders navigate a world that feels too loud and too bright. I built my life from scratch, brick by heavy brick. Then I met Julian. He is a landscape architect who designs public parks for underfunded neighborhoods. He is grounded, quiet, and sees the world in terms of roots and foundations. When he proposed, it was not on a yacht or a private island. It was on the tailgate of his truck after we spent a Saturday volunteering at a community garden. It was real. But Julian's mother, Victoria Vance, is a Chicago real estate titan. Victoria does not yell. She does not throw things or use obvious insults. She uses silent seating charts and polite smiles as weapons. From the moment we got engaged, the wedding planning became a slow, methodical erasure. My 5 guests were seated near the kitchen doors. The menu tasting was scheduled on a day she knew I would be at a medical conference. Every time I tried to set a boundary, she smiled, touched my arm, and said, "Elena, darling, let me handle the heavy lifting." "You are so busy with your little clinic." I thought she was only a snob. I thought she cared about protecting her social image. I did not realize I was a line item in a corporate merger. The turning point came on a quiet Tuesday evening. Julian was in the shower. His laptop sat open on the kitchen island, logged into his family cloud server. I only wanted to find the caterer contract. Instead, I opened a folder labeled Vance Sterling Zoning and Contingency. Inside were not wedding plans. There were legal draft zoning permits and email chains between Victoria and Richard Sterling. The Sterlings owned the commercial lot Victoria needed for a $40 million downtown development. The city council was resisting the permits because the project lacked community legacy. A marriage alliance between the Vances and the Sterlings would secure the influence they needed. Julian and the Sterling daughter Chloe had dated briefly in college. My blood turned cold as I read further. Victoria was not hoping I would leave. She was planning it. The emails described a contingency plan for the rehearsal dinner. Victoria had prepared a speech designed to expose my foster care background in front of Julian investors and the Sterling family. The goal was simple. Humiliate me publicly. Push me to cancel the wedding out of shame. Leave Julian vulnerable enough to fall back toward Chloe. I did not cry. People who survive the system learn not to fall apart when the floor disappears. They search for the nearest load-bearing wall. I pulled out my phone connected to the cloud drive and forwarded every file to my encrypted email. 48 hours later, I sat at the head table during the rehearsal dinner, watching Victoria tap her crystal glass with a silver spoon. She stood, smiled warmly at the room full of elite guests, and looked directly at me. She had no idea I had already rewritten her ending. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, I did not shake. I did not cry. When you grow up waiting for the other shoe to drop, you learn how to build a steel floor. I went to my clinic, worked with 3 nonverbal toddlers, and helped a little girl with cerebral palsy hold a paintbrush for the first time. That is real work. What Victoria Vance was doing was only theater. At 4 in the afternoon, I arrived at the venue. It was a historic wood-paneled private club overlooking Lake Michigan. I found the AV technician, a college student named Marcus, who looked completely exhausted. Victoria had spent the last hour berating him over microphone feedback. I handed him a crisp $100 bill and a USB drive. "Victoria wants a surprise presentation played right after her toast," I said calmly. "Can you cue this PDF to the main projector the second she raises her glass?" Marcus, eager to annoy Victoria, nodded immediately. By 7 that evening, the room was packed. 80 members of Chicago elite sat at round tables covered in ivory linen. My 5 guests, my clinic manager, 2 former foster siblings, and my college roommate were pushed into the back corner near the service hallway, exactly where Victoria wanted them hidden from her photographs. Julian sat beside me with his hand resting warmly on my knee. He looked tense, sensing the predatory energy radiating from his mother, but he squeezed my hand gently. "I have got you," he whispered. Then came the clink of silver against crystal. Victoria stood slowly, She wore a tailored crimson suit, looking less like the mother of the groom and more like a CEO announcing a hostile takeover. Richard Sterling and his daughter Chloe sat at the prime table to her right. "For those who do not know me, I am Victoria Vance," she began, her voice dripping with practiced elegance. "We are here to celebrate Julian and, of course, to welcome Elena." She turned toward me, smiling without warmth. "Elena comes from humble beginnings. The foster system. A life without legacy, without roots, and without the connections that build this city. But Julian has always had a generous heart. He has always been drawn toward charity projects." A suffocating silence swallowed the room. Julian stiffened beside me, his face burning with sudden anger. He started to stand, but I gripped his wrist. "Not yet. It takes a certain kind of ambition to climb into a world you were never meant for." Victoria continued, raising her champagne glass toward Richard Sterling. "But the Vance family understands the importance of aligning with the right people. People who understand legacy. To the future of Chicago." "Thank you, Victoria," I said calmly. My voice carried across the silent room. I did not stand. I only picked up my phone and pressed a single button. "But since we are discussing legacy and alignment, I think Mr. Sterling deserves to see the actual blueprints for that future." Behind Victoria, the massive projector screen flashed. The polished childhood slideshow disappeared. In its place appeared a 10-foot projection of the private email chain from Victoria Cloud Server. The subject line glowed across the screen. "Vance Sterling zoning contingency, the rehearsal dinner strategy." Victoria froze with her champagne flute suspended in midair. She turned slowly toward the screen. The color drained from her face so quickly she looked sick. Richard Sterling adjusted his reading glasses and leaned forward, studying the highlighted lines projected above the room. "Step 1, publicly isolate the foster girl at the dinner. Step 2, force the breakup. Step 3, position Chloe to secure the Sterling lot merger," Victoria Richard said quietly, his voice slicing through the silence. "What exactly am I looking at?" Richard Sterling did not yell. Men who control half the commercial real estate in Chicago do not need to raise their voices to shake a room. He slowly removed his reading glasses, folded them carefully and placed them beside his. "Untouched plate of sea bass, Victoria," Richard said calmly, his voice carrying the cold danger of a man who just discovered termites in his foundation. "Are you telling me this is fake? Because if it is not, then you just tried to use my daughter as a zoning contingency." Victoria's composure finally cracked. She released a breathy laugh and looked around the room as though expecting everyone else to laugh with her. "Richard, please, this is a malicious fabrication. A cheap parlor trick." Then her eyes snapped toward me, filled with pure venom. "Elena, I do not know what desperate illegal stunt you pulled to manipulate these documents, but security is going to escort you out." I did not flinch. I had spent years calming screaming parents in medical waiting rooms. A desperate socialite in a crimson suit was not going to raise my pulse. "It is a direct export from your family-shared cloud server, Victoria," I replied calmly, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Time-stamped Tuesday at 9:14 in the morning. If Richard asks his IT team to trace the IP address, they will find it originated from the desktop computer in your downtown office. The same office where you wrote the email calling me the OT girl and an obstacle to the Sterling lot merger. A wave of shocked whispers swept across the room instantly. In Victoria, world reputation was currency, and she was losing millions by the second. Chloe Sterling suddenly pushed back her chair. The sharp scrape against the hardwood floor echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. She looked at her father, then at Victoria, her expression filled with disgust and humiliation. "Dad, we are leaving?" Chloe said, her voice trembling but firm. "I am not a bargaining chip for a permit, and I am definitely not a rebound for a man whose mother treats people like line items. Chloe, darling, you misunderstand." Victoria started reaching toward her, but Richard lifted a hand, stopping her instantly. "The zoning partnership is dead," Victoria Richard said flatly. "Do not call my office and do not contact my associates." Then he turned and walked out beside his daughter. Victoria remained frozen, her hand suspended awkwardly in the air. For the first time in her life, money could not repair the room around her. Then Julian stood. He did not look furious. He looked painfully clear. He stared at his mother not like a powerful businesswoman, but like a stranger who had finally revealed exactly who she was, Julian. Victoria whispered, her voice cracking as the polished matriarch mask finally fell apart. Baby, you know how this business works. I did this for your future. For our family. No, Mom, Julian answered quietly. You did it for a $40 million property deal. You looked at the woman I love, a woman who spends every day helping children discarded by the world, and you called her a charity project. He stepped away from the table and gently took my hand. You do not understand what a family is, Julian continued softly, and you do not know me at all. Then he turned toward my small table hidden near the back corner. Marcus, Sarah, David, he called warmly, using each of my foster siblings and friends by name, honoring them openly. Let us go get some real dinner. Deep dish pizza is on me. We did not storm out and we did not create a spectacle. We simply walked down the center aisle together, leaving Victoria Vance standing completely alone beneath the massive projection of her own cruelty. We didn't go back to Julian's sterile downtown penthouse. We went to a neon-lit pizzeria on the south side, sitting in a cracked vinyl booth, sharing deep dish pizza with my former foster siblings and my clinic staff. I realized that this was the rehearsal dinner I was always meant to have. There were no crystal flutes, no hidden agendas, and no seating charts designed to erase me. There was just loud laughter, garlic butter, and people who knew my history and loved me anyway. The original wedding was scheduled for the next afternoon at a $50,000 a night estate in Lake Forest. At 11 p.m., Julian made one phone call to the estate manager, canceled the event, and walked away from the deposit without a second thought. We're not giving her the audience, he told me, kissing my forehead. We're doing this our way. We got married on Sunday morning in the community garden Julian had spent the last 2 years designing for an underfunded neighborhood. It wasn't an exclusive venue you could rent. It was a living, breathing public space. We stood under a wooden pergola draped in wildflowers and climbing ivy. My clinic manager officiated. My foster brother, David, walked me down a path lined with sunflowers. There were exactly 32 people there. Every single one of them had earned their seat. When Julian read his vows, his voice was thick with emotion. You are my foundation, he said, looking only at me. The only legacy I ever want to build. The fallout in Chicago's elite real estate circles was swift and merciless. Victoria Vance didn't just lose the sterling deal. She lost her social leverage. In a world built on private reputations, being exposed as a woman who would publicly humiliate a foster kid to manipulate a zoning vote made her radioactive. Within a month, 2 major joint venture partners quietly dissolved their contracts with her firm, citing misaligned corporate values. The Whisper Network turned her into a pariah. She wasn't canceled by the internet. She was exiled by her own peers, who suddenly realized that if she would do that to her son's fiancé, she would destroy them next. Victoria sent one email a month later. Not an apology, but a demand for Julian to stop embarrassing the family name. Julian replied with 2 words. What name? And blocked her number. That was the last time her shadow crossed our threshold. 6 months later, my clinic expanded into the very commercial lot Victoria had tried so desperately to acquire. The city council approved our grant for a new sensory-friendly pediatric wing. I signed the lease on a Tuesday. People who grow up in the system are taught that we are temporary. But a legacy isn't a shared cloud server or a $40 million permit. A legacy is the safe space you build for others. If you've ever had to choose your own family, or if you've ever stood up to someone who tried to make you feel small, I see you. Drop a comment below and tell me about your real foundation. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share it. Welcome to our real family. I'll see you in the next story.